Breaking news on RT International. A Turkish ship comes under shelling off the coast of Libya. One officer is killed and several crew members have been injured. In other news, Angela Merkel gets a warm welcome in Moscow, where she stressed that Germany and Russia's economies need to move closer, step by step. The US ambassador in Greece is reportedly being removed over his inefficiency, as Washington's pushing Athens not to get involved in a new gas pipeline proposed by Russia. Plus, protesters in Albania are angered by a deadly police raid on an Albanian district in Macedonia, where it's claimed officers targeted an armed group. Hello, Live News 24/7 from Moscow. This is RT International. Let's start by telling you what we're learning that's coming out of the Mediterranean at the moment, that of a Turkish cargo ship that's been attacked off the coast of Libya, near to the port city of Tobruk. The shelling has killed one of the ship's officers and also injured several crew members. The vessel was apparently attacked twice, first from the shore and then from the air. That's according to the Turkish Foreign Ministry, which also says the ship was in international waters at the time. Officials don't know who's behind the attack. Now, Libya, as you might know, is currently divided between rival factions. The elected and internationally recognized government had to flee the capital in Tripoli last summer, of course, when it was pushed out by a militia coalition known as Libya Dawn. There are also several radical Islamist factions vying for control of the country as well. Libya's been in turmoil since the 2011 ousting of Colonel Gaddafi and his eventual killing. The following year, an attack on an American consulate killed the US ambassador. In the last 4 years, Libya's had many heads of state, while the number of terror attacks has soared. And late last year, Islamic State militants infiltrated the country, taking over key cities in the north.
It is Liberation Day in Libya. The transitional government is declaring the country free.
You have won a revolution.
Your friends in Britain and in France will stand with you as you build your democracy.
Democracy, a new future for this country.
The great new Libya rising up.
New page for the Libyan people, the start of a process to establish democracy.
Libya is in for a period of horrendous chaos.
It's going to be an ineffective, powerless regime.
It's going to be a war, warring feuds, tribal feuds that is going to go on forever.
The deteriorating situation in Libya. It's difficult to see a path out of this chaos.
Libya is not managed anymore, not even governed anymore. It is experiencing chaos, and the question is, how is it that after an intervention which took place more than 3 years ago, there has been no reflection on what should happen after?
The German Chancellor has visited Moscow to pay her respects to the Soviet soldiers that died defeating Nazism. It's seen as a conciliatory move after her rejection of an invitation on May the 9th to the Victory Day parade. She received a warm welcome in Moscow. After the commemoration ceremony, Vladimir Putin walked her to the Kremlin. You can see the two of them chatting here. The Russian president appearing to tell the Chancellor about some of the iconic sites that they're passing by. And they also stopped to have a chat with some of the youngest visitors to the Kremlin Museum, with Merkel even using the opportunity to speak a little bit of Russian.
Where do you come from? Turkey. Turkey. Oh. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And after that junior photo op, the German and Russian leaders got down to business, spending a couple of hours in one-on-one talks. They agreed that Moscow and Berlin needed to work together. As for the crisis in eastern Ukraine, both Merkel and Putin stressed that diplomacy was the only solution to that. The German Chancellor also brought up the issue of Crimea, reiterating Berlin's refusal to recognize the legality of the peninsula's reunification with Russia, while Vladimir Putin stressed that business needs the economic obstacles between their two countries to be removed.
Today there are certain problems in our relations.
The sooner these problems stop having their negative influence on our relations, the better. We will be working to achieve this.
Some of the major media outlets presented Merkel's meeting with Putin as frosty, claiming it did little to mend ties between Russia and Germany. As for the way the Chancellor addressed the crisis in Ukraine, that was described as confrontational. But they all overlooked her positive message regarding economic ties with Russia.
Die Wirtschaftsräume Russlands und der Europäischen Union schrittweise auch anzunähern. Ich glaube, in einer globalen Welt gibt es gute Gründe dafür, an diesem großen Projekt zu arbeiten. Und die deutsch-russischen bilateralen Beziehungen werden sich hier sehr gut einfügen.
Well, Angela Merkel may be pushing for better economic ties between the EU and Russia, but Washington, well, it's far less enthusiastic about the idea, which may be why America's envoy to Greece could be out of a job sooner than expected. Reports suggest that David Pearce will leave Athens a year earlier than planned over what the State Department says is his sluggishness in informing the US government about political and economic developments in the country. Well, this comes amid Washington's resentment over Greece's readiness to agree a gas pipeline project which has been proposed by Moscow. The US Special Envoy for Energy Affairs went as far as telling Greece that it would increase its appeal to Western investors if it resisted partnering with Russia on that gas pipeline. Well, let's just remind you about what the so-called Turkish stream is all about. It would see Russian gas delivered to Europe through Turkey and Greece, bypassing Ukraine. Well, the thing is, if there's one thing that Greece needs right now, as it runs out of cash, it's desperately in need of investment. Let's take a look at what that would actually mean for them. The Turkish Stream pipeline promises to make Greece a regional energy hub in the future. The transit fees alone would help Greece recover from its debt-stricken finances. Benefits would also include a substantial gas discount, which it would receive from Moscow. Well, geopolitical analyst Patrick Henningsen told us why Greece should agree to the deal.
Any sort of partnership, positive partnership with a country like Russia and inward investment might make a big difference. Where are they going to get investment from? Certainly not from the United States, not in a big way, but Russia could be a big source of foreign investment for Greece, and that's very important for Greece in the financial situation that it finds itself in.
The US has been making quite a habit of trying to determine Europe's economic policies. Back in October, Vice President Joe Biden said Washington played grey cardinal in Europe when imposing sanctions on Russia over the Ukrainian crisis.
It is true they did not want to do that. But again, it was America's leadership and the President of the United States insisting, oftentimes almost having to embarrass Europe to stand up.
Patrick Henningsen also told us that Washington's staunch opposition to Greece's participation in the energy project proposed by Moscow is very much about geopolitics rather than economics.
Natural gas is the dominant regional factor. It's the game changer. So the U.S. realizes this, and if it can win influence along these lines and push for its own solution for another gas supply to Europe, it's going to do that. It's not just on the business level, it's not just that, it's about geopolitical influence.
Coming up, civilians in Yemen are desperately awaiting a promised ceasefire on Tuesday to allow in humanitarian aid. Stay with us as RT looks at how they've been trying to lead normal lives amid the Saudi-led bombing campaign. Also ahead, Denmark moves closer to becoming an e-economy. People there are having to worry less and less about taking cash out with them. We'll explain why shortly. The fragile ceasefire between Kiev and anti-government forces is largely being observed in Ukraine, but both sides almost daily accuse each other of opening fire and violating the truce. Sporadic fighting is forcing some locals to remain living in bomb shelters. RT's Murad Gazdiev visited one of them.
Welcome to no man's land, the thin stretch of territory that separates Ukrainian state forces who are arrayed just behind those hills over there and anti-government troops who are themselves entrenched behind those hills over there. And all that's kept the two sides apart is a tentative ceasefire that's held for the better part of 3 months. But that doesn't mean all is quiet here. And people still call this a bomb shelter complex home. The bomb shelter itself is decades old, constructed for a different war, less hot than this. But creaks and groans aside, it still serves its purpose.
Здравствуйте.
Почти 500 человек. У нас места даже пол не видно.
Ну когда, а потом 260 стало. А было такое, что спали вот полностью, вот на полу прямо так лежат.
And that wasn't the worst of it. Зимой холод был?
Конечно, она же не отапливается здесь. Конечно, холодно. Света нету, хотя бы печка, ничего. Нам это, мы одеты просто в курточках, ложимся спать. Вот вставали в курточки, чтобы больше на себя натягивали. Ну так, детей вот так вот, чтоб не это, чтоб дети хотя бы не померзли.
Outside another set of blast doors, we found the winter kitchen.
They're just telling us that they were forced to move the cooking fires down here into this corridor from outside because of shrapnel, because of bullets flying about, that it was so dangerous they were forced to cook for the entirety of the winter here.
Осколки падали даже, можно сказать, в кастрюле, сковородки у нас падали осколки.
The rest of the complex wasn't much more accommodating.
This bomb shelter used to be state-of-the-art. It was built by the Soviets to withstand a nuclear war. And this is the air filtration system. It still works. Nowadays, though, this room is a bathroom. They hang their washing here, and this is where they wash.
Local fighters help with food, relatives with what they can. Humanitarian aid doesn't get this far. But even in these desperate conditions, these people played the hosts.
Ой, мы... Спасибо. А в школу не ходишь? Что так? Почему?
Потому что война на дворе.
Just imagine living here for 3 months along with 300 other people, crammed into a space that can't be much bigger than 2 medium-sized apartments, without power, without heating, without clean water, without a constant source of food even. Many people left, but many others still call this home.
Murad Gazdiev, RT, Eastern Ukraine.
We're going to take a short break now, after which we look at deadly clashes between police and armed gangs in the Balkans. That and more in just a moment.